Welcome to a new fragrance review. Today we're going to talk about fragrances that are cheap and that smell really good. So when I talk about that subject, the first of all the fragrance that will come to my mind, which is actually my scent of the day, and it's just happened to be, which is Quorum by Antonio Puig. And I know I pronounced Puig wrong, but anyway, by that brand, it's really awesome fragrance. I would say all the fragrances by that brand are great, and they are relatively cheap, especially if you pick them at discounter. But even Quorum, you can get it for like 20 something bucks Canadian in most pharmacies or shoppers if you're outside of Quebec. Amazing fragrance. I love it. It's old school. If you like stuff like, especially because I think it's the closest fragrance to it, Polo, the original like Polo by Ralph Lauren, you would enjoy that fragrance. Anyway, for me, it's a really great cheap fragrance, and the whole line, the whole brand is good. It's more old school what they're doing. Maybe not the more recent fragrance like Coram Silver. It's a bit more modern, but still they are good. They're cheap, and definitely something I would recommend you giving it a try. And it's not because it's cheap that it's bad, because a lot of cheap fragrances are really good. Think of Drakkar Noir. It's a really great fragrance. Typically, it's cheap. Just looking at my fragrance ticket to be sure to not forget anything. Another great fragrance that's cheap is Burberry London. The bottle is relatively small, like I'm not sure if it's 30 ml or 50 ml. You can get for like $20. Often it's going to be there at shoppers. A lot of the Burberry are great. Burberry Brit also is really amazing. I would say Burberry Brit is better than Burberry London, but they're both good. Probably Burberry London would be a bit more, not mass appealing, but easy to enjoy because it's tobacco up an axe, but most people don't know what it is. And it's this nice sweet tobacco fragrance, a bit of cinnamon also inside of it. It's really nice. Remind me a lot of Herod by Parfum de Marly, but to me, London is way better than Herod. And Brit is more powdery and with some rose inside of it, so it might be a bit harder to like, but it's a nice classic gentleman fragrance, so it's good. Thinking of cheap fragrance from Shopper, The Dreamer by Versace is another great fragrance. Really cheap. That one also is a fragrance that might be a bit divisive. There's people that love it, people that hate it, meaning it's really awesome. There's a tobacco blossom note inside of it. It's really unique. It's really great. It's a really powdery fragrance with that tobacco blossom. It's kind of floral, powderyish kind of fragrance. So it might be harder to love, but it's nice. I love it. There's some classic also that can be found for cheap. Thinking of Azzaro pour Homme, thinking of Song pour Homme, all those pour Homme fragrance that were the first of the line of many brands are now sold for cheap because they're not too much in demand. And there's a lot of those fragrances that are awesome. Of course, they're more old school, but still great. Another brand that I like that have cheap fragrance is Giorgio Beverly Hills. Most of them are more old school fragrance, but they're really awesome. Aramis also have great fragrance for cheap. They're a bit more expensive than everything else that I've said. With most fragrance, you'll find them if you got discounter for like $40, $50, but they're still worth it and it's still relatively cheap anyway. Geoffrey Beene fragrance are nice. They're a bit divisive also, but it's a great brand to look at. Jacques Bogart, also an amazing line of fragrance. And there's someone once that said, like, that described Jacques Bogart, and I think it's the best way to say it is if fragrance is an art, Jacques Bogart is porn. And that's really what that line fragrance is. It's just they find some kind of type of fragrance, they make it like in a way that's really different, really nice, not necessarily like bold or anything, though it's like mostly old school fragrance, but they do something really nice. And typically those fragrances are relatively cheap. I would say most of the one man show line, you'll get it for around $20 or less. So it's really good. I was talking of Versace. A lot of Versace fragrances are expensive, but some of them are cheap. And Blue Jeans is one of those cheap fragrances that could be nice. I know Jeremy fragrance is known to and really love that fragrance. And seems to be the only fragrance that I really love for real, because he's mostly talking about the same kind of fragrance that it seems that most of them he's paid to talk about them. But when he talk about blue jeans, it seems to be genuine, so I assume they really like it. And it's a nice fragrance. Other cheap fragrance, there's Kai's perfume. Kai's perfume is indie perfumer. It's a woman that makes the perfume, and she's making a lot of gourmand type of fragrance with vanilla or candy or chocolate kind of scent. It's more feminine, but there's a couple fragrance in the line that are masculine, and I would say that are really awesome. My three favorite of the brand would be Vanille de Boche, which is an amazing. It's not a clone, but kind of a clone of Tobacco Vanille by Tom Ford. It's 1/10 of the price and at least 100% of the same awesomeness. There's Mandarlo Cioccolato, which would be somehow in the same type of fragrance as the line of L'Homme Ideal or Pegasus. Also, it's sweet, it's nice. It would be more of a dating fragrance. And another one that's really awesome is Homme Sauvage, which is a leather and vanilla fragrance. Really unique, really nice. It's awesome. It's really different from most fragrance that you'll find, but it's worth giving it a try. If you like leather, it's probably something really unique that you'll ever have tried. And even if it's like somewhat weird, that mix of vanilla and leather is awesome, and it makes it one of my most complimented fragrance. Another brand to look at for cheaper fragrance, Jacomo. Jacomo is not as known. Jacomo de Giacomo Rouge is a really nice fragrance. It's probably the easiest fragrance of the line to find. It's somehow in the same broad family as Le Male by Jean-Paul Gaultier. It's not like a clone or anything. It's far from it, and you'll smell it. It's not the same at all. It's just like in the same type of fragrance, but it's great. And I just tried three fragrances from the brands. No, four fragrances of the brand. Giacomo de Giacomo, the original one, is great. It's spicy and smoky. It's a nice fragrance. And the other fragrance that I found, I think both of them are discontinued, but typically they make great fragrance. It's not a well-known brand, at least not anymore, which makes them make the fragrance cheaper, and it's good because those fragrances are nice. Zara also is a place where you can find nice fragrance for cheap. Now, most of their fragrance are bad, but some of them are awesome. Could think of Rich, Warm, Addictive, Intense, Dark, Exclusive, and Rinse Wash that are like the three I love the most of the brand. I think Rinse Wash is discontinued though, but the two others are still for sale, at least at the moment I'm talking to you. Old Spice is a great fragrance. It's cheap and it's great. I don't know, I've never had a chance to smell it, but many people say it smells a lot like Viking by Creed. Someone could say that it has niche quality. And you can think about it, Old Spice, it's like the first guy's fragrance that was massively marketed. It's still there, must have something good in it. Roger et Galet also is a really awesome brand. Most of what they do are fragrance for women, but some of them are really for guys. So those for guys are really good. I could think of Open, which is a tobacco fragrance, but a really old school tobacco fragrance. If you tried Havana by Aramis, it's really similar. If you haven't, any old school like 80s fragrance, if you know that tobacco note that's inside of those fragrance, well, Open, it's a fragrance of that tobacco note with other stuff around it, of course, but it's really showcasing that old school tobacco note. I could think also of Jean-Marie Farina by Roger Gallet, which actually was a fragrance by that guy, Jean-Marie Farina, that made a famous fragrance. And you probably know that story that Napoleon was putting like so much perfume, like every day, many times a day. Was putting perfume on himself. He was addicted and he was buying like 15 bottles of fragrance a month. Maybe you've heard that story. Well, the perfume was putting is called Jean-Marie Farina by the brand Roger Gallet, and it's a cheap fragrance. I think it's like $60 for the 100 ml, but there's a 50 ml or 30 ml, I'm not sure, for like $30. And all this is Canadian, by the way, the Canadian price, so it's cheaper in the US. Great fragrance. It doesn't last long for this one because it's an eau de cologne with still the original formula that Napoleon was using. So you can assume that it won't last long. It predates by a long time artificial ingredients. There's also Cedra by that brand. That's nice. I mean, then it's a question of taste. You should give it a try, but it's a nice brand to look at. And all their fragrances are relatively cheap. All their eau de cologne like Cedra and Jean-Marie Farina. Jean-Marie Farina, it says in big eau de cologne. It's a red box if you want to find that one. And they make nice stuff. The Cuba fragrance, I think I should talk about them. They're not all awesome, but they are all super cheap. I don't think you can find one that's over $10. When you go to look on Fragrantica, they are all like $7 and it's in Canadian. So probably $5 in the US. It's ridiculous how cheap. They are not all good, but some of them are. Cuba Royale, Cuba Gold, which is the most famous one. They're good. Cuba, I think it's Cuba Prestige, which is a Amen clone, if I remember well. A couple of them are great. You need to look up. I mean, also it's $5. So if you buy something that's crap, you just put it in the trash and you live with it. It's $5. It's like a bag of chip or something. So it's not such a big deal if you don't like it. But still, you can look it up. Look what fragrance are worth it in that line. And also that makes great fragrance to bring with you on a trip because comes in a little metal thing, so you know that there's no such risk if you break it. If you break it, you don't care. So that's about it for the fragrance that are cheap but really good. I hope you enjoyed the video. If it's the case, like and share. If you have any fragrance or brand or like any brand that sell a fragrance for cheap that you think I forgot to put in the list, just write it in the comment. So thanks for watching and see you soon.